this is the tier list. So I could have done it a different way. I could have done it like this. I'm gonna do BBCF because we like Blaze Blue. Right, we like Blaze Blue. BBCF. So I usually do letters, and one thing I used to do, especially in like Dragon Ball days, is I would be like, hey, the letters mean what they mean. And people would always be like, what does that mean? Some people understood that if the lowest tier was, I know this is not in order, but let's say the lowest tier is, let's say something like this, right? This is only for example. I know someone wants to be a contrarian and come at this. Let's say it's something like this. So this is supposed to imply that the weakest group of characters are actually pretty strong, and the only issue is that the triple S character or characters are just really, really fucking broken, right? But there are people who are out there who are like, well, if the average character is S tier, average is actually C, so the characters you have an A- are actually F tier characters. And I'm like, bro, F tier characters can't even like, what do you mean? And I used to get in these really long arguments, and it was really annoying. So earlier this year, I made a conscious decision. I mean, honestly, I started doing last year, but this year I was like, officially, we will no longer use letters for tier lists. Instead, we will have words, and I think it's just way easier for people to understand what's going on. So instead, the top tier is GOAT activity, and then the tier under that is great chance to win. The tier under that is bracket ruiner. Ruiner is plural because it's more than one. And the last tier is good but not solo. So this is supposed to represent an intersection between a character's potential and how they perform. Because these are usually the two things I think are the most important for me. There are people out there, so for example, good friend Apology Man, his tier lists are just like matchups. Like the characters who have the most good matchups are top tier, and the characters who have the most bad matchups are bottom tier. So usually I think of an intersection of how good I think a character can be and how good a character can perform, which is kind of why I have this type of thought this time. I know before I had like wins, relevant, stuff like that, but I think this is kind of how I'm thinking right now. Tier lists are supposed to be a reflection of what the person who's making it is thinking about right now, so that's kind of just where I'm at. For the two perspectives, one is potential and one is how they do in tournaments. So before I fixed the audio, I talked about Jacko. I talk a lot of shit about Jacko, especially when she came out. I think now, between buffs and just her doing better, people accept that, like, she's strong, she has a bunch of stuff, but the character aside, her moves are like minion pulls, minion tosses, hitting the minion this way and that way, and this super and that super. These moves are not so clear what you're supposed to do with them. They're kind of like a player has to, like, play the character, play them in matches, see how they work in different situations, and find different uses for them, and extrapolate what these moves mean. Where a character like Soul is, oh, I burn you with Fafnir, oh, I punch you with far slash and close slash, oh, I throw you because you block, oh, you got hit, goodbye. Very straightforward. So that's like the potential section. For tournament performance, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just like, oh, how well do I think the character both does currently / should be able to do. Okay, so with that being said, let's make the list and then we'll go through each character. The order thing is not checked off because it's not really in order. So let me go through, start first by defining each tier to be more specific, and then I'll talk about the characters. So GOAT activity. So these are characters that I just think you can't go wrong with. Honestly, you just really can't go wrong with them. They're very safe choices. They're all like really good at many things with very little flaws and like really good matchups. Out of these, I would probably hear an argument for Nago being slightly lower, but it's still hard for me to think that he is not like super good, even despite his new main flaw. Great chance to win. So these characters are actually very close to the GOAT characters. All these characters, either they have like a god win condition but then flaws, or like they're like really well rounded with like a small flaw. But regardless, all those characters are tournament winners. They're just not as straight up reliable. Like, let's say like the GOAT characters are like 100%. The characters that are like great are like 85% to 90%, right? Then you have the bracket ruiners. So these characters are also good characters, but their main thing, so while they have good matchups, is either they're polarizing or their flaw matters more than the characters above them. And specifically though, the character from like a tournament perspective, the main thing they're really good at is ruining a character's above them run, if that makes sense. All these characters you've seen in that tier have like beat a character where you're just like, oh snap, and like whatever was supposed to happen for X player, like that dream is dead. And then the last characters are good but not solo. So these are characters that have really good advantage stage or really good neutral or something that's really good, but because of their polarizing design, they're more matchup focused, and in my opinion probably require a second character for the player to be stable. If not, then I mean, not only did I have to worry about like the GOATs and like the greats, you know, but specifically the bracket ruiners could give them like a really bad time. Okay, now I probably want to go from the bottom up, but it's gonna sound a little cop-out. I'm not gonna talk about Sin that much because I have noticed a pattern for myself that I tend to be one character behind as far as character knowledge, if that makes sense, right? So, for example, I have been just learning about Bridget in detail these past couple weeks, these past like 2-3 weeks. So I probably won't be learning like in-depth Sin stuff until like a couple of weeks into like Delilah. Sin is just like not really a tournament factor at the moment. And since I'm prepping for certain events on this patch, and like a lot of players just like, yeah, Sin's flushed. Even though I don't really have an opinion on him totally, I just don't really have anything to say about him because he's not being represented in tournament like that. So we're actually going to start with Potemkin. So Potemkin has again an amazing advantage state because he has Garuda, right? He has Garuda for if he knocks you down or like gets you to respect. He has Heat Knuckle on reads and situations, and his return is really high for stuff. The issue is his main problem is that the way his moveset is built out is that he's forced to do stuff. He's forced to do a lot of stuff. Like, he's basically a classic grappler-ism is that your HP is a resource and you have to do stuff with your HP, like be willing to take hits and stuff. And he takes it in spades because a lot of characters can whip punish him into like advantageous states where he doesn't necessarily get advantageous stuff from his like what he does, you know. So he's a character that requires a lot more reads than other characters. The good news is though, if you're good at these reads, you can win. You could definitely win. He's really strong in Gold Burst. He's extremely strong on meter. The Gigantic Kai super, like if someone doesn't deal with the activation of it, it's basically like neutral ending, guaranteed offense, blah blah blah, right? Outside of that stuff, his early and mid game is really bad, and the damage is pretty high in the game. So there's not a guarantee that he will get these things, if that makes sense. Okay. Then we have Ino. So Ino, they always make faster every version, and she has really good mix-up, and she's always been like pretty volatile in that, similar to Potemkin, she has a really good mid and late game because she's good at gold. She's good with Gold Burst, and she's good when she has meter. Unlike Potemkin, so she has less health. She's not, originally she wasn't so guaranteed to get all this meter, but with the changes in the recent patch, it's easier for her to get meter. She's a character that builds risk faster than other characters, so it's easier for her to get meter. She's actually decently mobile too because of her, like, she could hover dash and air dash back. She has one of those really far and variable air dash forwards and air dash backs, and she's really good at attacking at weird angles. And she has pretty good advantageous positions. The main thing is just that like a lot of things have gaps. She has to overextend a lot, and she moves in a really linear fashion, and her early game's not good. So early game not being good basically means like from round start to like, let's say, it just depends on how a round goes, like 70 to 60 seconds in, means like some of the characters above her can beat her just by touching her, right? Like if Zato, honestly, Zato makes you block a 5H, she's in a bad spot, right? Here's another one. Like, let's say Mei jumps in on Ino. Not a good time, right? Not a good time. She's going to pull up, either do 2K, or she's going to do close slash. If she does close slash, it's a really bad time. If she does S Dolphin, it's -3 RPS, which I don't know how good Ino is at -3 RPS, but Mei's RPS is all better overall because she has better frame data, which means Mei gets to push, which means Mei's building meter, and Mei's building Ino's risk, and Ino builds more risk than normal, and then Mei gets a random hit with 50 meter, cashes out, it snowballs after that. So personally, I think it's really a struggle to be like, oh, I need to be cool with just losing for like half the game. And then either I get a random gold burst or I burst with like 40 meter and like do some shit and then meme them. And I have to do that like every round. Right? And I think that's Ino's main struggle. There's also like matchup stuff where like, there's Baiken, there's Zato, there's Soul, there's Chipp, there's Leo Whitefang, there's Nagoriyuki, there's HC. There's a lot of characters that, for lack of a better word, destroy her baseline game plan and make it so she requires really specific countermeasures against a lot of characters. That being said, again, it can be done. It can be done, but I'm not sure about solo totally outside of like a master, right? So Millia is kind of the same thing. Millia, unlike the other two, unlike Ino and Potemkin, she's actually pretty good early game. So Millia's main problem is that her mid and late game are not good. And what I mean is that generally her return is not that great. Her meter build is generally not that great. What they did in this patch is that they made her corner mix more threatening depending on the rage that you're at. They made it so that you could use 5H more, mostly for like certain like stray hits. You can use 5H more. And then with the change to S-Disc, it makes her passive rushdown better. And what I mean is like Chipp, who a lot of people compare, people always compare Chipp and Millia. And normally in Guilty Gear, Chipp and Millia are like really different characters. But in this game, they have like a bunch of similarities. The thing is, Chipp is really good at disengaging on his terms from his offense. And the main reason is that he has these Rekkas that, while they're punishable, the threat of the follow-ups discourages mashing and encourages like you to do things where he can't counter hit you if you're wrong. So like holding up, dashing and pressing buttons, things like that. And because of that, he's able to play at a really safe, effective range, and he builds a lot of meter. Where Millia doesn't normally have, like, she has Lust Shaker, right? But before she just had Lust Shaker. Now she can use S-Disc from really far range, and S-Disc actually really, really, really good. Really good at this. Really, really good at this. But the thing is, Millia doesn't build meter as fast as Chipp does. Like she doesn't get to do like her whole Gatling string into Rekka. Like she's just like not as good at that as Chipp. So her strength really comes from exploding really early, like hitting like a 2K2D, like hitting like a random jump in, hitting an air versus air. And if she does that, she can run it on you really hard. But if the round goes long, or like she's doing like a lot of block strings into nothing, that doesn't benefit her. Her throw isn't that high return. Like she's not really good at mixing you up off throw compared to other characters. So her main thing as a character tends to be that her mid and late game is not as good. Matchup wise, it's kind of a discussion. Like Leo's bad news. Mei, she's actually usually pretty good. Nago's like okay. HC, I hear mixed things. Chipp is like actually okay, but then Baiken is nightmare. Zato's kind of hard. Geo is really difficult. So her matchup spread is kind of weird. She has a bunch of this match is okay, but you get reward diff, like you get mid-late game killed by them having resources or something, which is also a problem. Baiken is a really good example of this. Like you could literally just meme Baiken the whole round, and then like Baiken gets a throw, kills you. Baiken tags you random combo, kills you in 2 touches. So that stuff is pretty rough. And unlike Chipp, she doesn't have a reversal. She doesn't have the guts, and she doesn't have anywhere near as overwhelming positive bonus situation. She has a very good, not downplaying, right? Amazing positive situation, but it's nowhere near as strong as Chipp's. And it doesn't come from just like making you block. Like she has to like throw you to get her like really, really god positive situation. So then we go to bracket ruiner. So this is, I want to say, pretty straightforward. These are characters that ruin brackets. I'm going to talk about Anji first because, I mean, if you've been paying attention to the game, then he should be one of the ones that are front and center because Anji ruined a lot of people's lives at Frosty Faustings. Your boy not included, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but Anji. So why Anji? So it's a combination of how he plays and that he hasn't been strong for a long time. Like this is probably, I shouldn't even say probably, this is his best version by far in Strive. So what happened to Anji? One, his reward is more consistent. So what I mean is it's mainly from his 5H change, his 5H launching. His reward is more consistent. That's a really, really big factor. I'll go as far as saying it's probably like his biggest factor. I want to say is more consistent return from stuff. Another really big one is in the cases that he gets to whiff punish you, then he gets Nagiha knockdown. Millia has shared this issue. I forgot to mention this, but Millia doesn't have this issue anymore either, where they knock you down with a soft down, but the opponent doesn't care because the character can't get there in time. So with Nagiha, now with the change, he has time to run all the way over you and meaty you. And, you know, if you play like a top tier, you're like, oh, a meaty, roll eyes, duh, I get meaties off everything. But for some characters, for a long time, Anji was one of them, like, he would confirm it and Nagiha, he just didn't get shit. And now, when he whip punishes you, he gets offense, which is really, really big because offense is I wouldn't say his offense is the best of all time, but his return is high as when he's correct. He's a character that forces you to commit, but he has, honestly, on his side, he has to commit both in neutral and on offense, but his return is really high. He has the highest guts in the game, so he's able to, you know, be wrong a couple more than the opponent. And I think he has a pretty consistent, if we're talking about like early game, mid game, late game, I think he's very consistent in every phase in the game. Like he can meme you really fast. He could be losing for the whole game, but like he lives because of guts, gets a random hit, kills you, you know, like he's very consistent the whole time. As far as like when can he win the game against you. Offensively, a lot of people will lean towards mid-late game because he gets Rin RC, but I would say just overall, he can make it happen. He can really make it happen this version, and that combined with his tools, like his call-out tools like preemptive call and spin and random fusion, makes opponents want to play a little bit more passively. And on top of that, since he was such an unpopular tournament character for a while, people didn't have neither a solid neutral strategy nor a solid defense strategy against the character. So combination of buffs plus people not being prepared plus how explosive he can be and how he is overall the same in every phase of the game, I think it makes him a solid bracket ruiner. Kai is also here. If we're talking about Kai as far as flaws, the one that will always be forever, I think, is how he is the poster boy of losing on your own offense. A lot of strike for characters, if they didn't already have some +3 thing or something, they gave them some type of bone to help them with their strike throw. And Kai just doesn't Kai is supposed to be shock state, honestly, I would say. You know, they buffed a bunch of stuff. They buffed Stunnage, they buffed Farsight, they buffed a bunch of stuff from him over time. But I think he still struggles against a bunch of the casts. I think he's a really hard character to play in tournaments. You have to gamble a lot. You have to be really confident in your choices. If you're a person who's really like analytical about their choices. So this was my thing with Millia. Like I kind of got heat when I dropped Millia. So I got eliminated from Evo by Kazam in a Millia mirror, and they're like, oh, okay, you got gapped by a better Millia than you. We knew this guy was better, and that's why you quit, because you're not cool with somebody being better for you with a character you're known for. That's not it. My winner set, I played against an Axl player, and the Axl player was instant block, faultless defensing the second hit of Millia's close slash, which is impossible for me to see coming. Like, you just can't see that coming. And my button would whiff, and I would take 70%. And I already was only seeing doom in all my choices. All the things I would see, it's like Melty Blood. It's like I was Tono. He has like the mystic eyes of death perception, right? And when I was doing stuff with Millia, I would make a choice, and I'm like, this leads to death if I'm wrong. Everything I was doing, I was like, this leads to death if I'm wrong. And I sort of have the same thing with Kai, where like with Kai, you know, like he's got good buttons, and like, yeah, he has stun edge, but like, I'm like, dude, if you fuck up, everything leads to death. And like, everyone has like all this shit, and all you have is a small lightning bolt and a dream and a 6p, and that's all you got. So I got that, like, that's like the real thing. But he can do it to you. Like, the main thing about Kai is he is definitely better late game. He's really, really obnoxious with meter. His DP is not good technically, but he's got a really good reversal and ride the lightning, and that is 9 frames, you know. Whereas his SDP is 11, so it's easier to safe jump. You can do a lot of shenanigans to his SDP. Once he gets meter, he can kind of meme you. He is also really good at one thing that he does really well in brackets is politely punishing strife players. He's really good at punishing backdashes. A lot of his damage comes from punishing backdashes or people airborne and stuff. So if you're not like really confident in the Kai matchup, he's gonna hit you randomly like 60-70%. Overall, since he doesn't have like a really stable path to victory, if that makes sense. Like even Potemkin, right? Like, so you can say Potemkin is okay or he's not good, but Potemkin has a path to victory. Like if he command grabs you, or if he hits you slide head and pulls up and his guard to impact, like he has a path to win. Where Kai just doesn't really have a thing that like, oh, I'm losing, I need to come back. Like what does he have? Like 5D RC? Like what does he have? Like I don't know. Tell me in the comments. Okay. Faust. Tournament-wise, Faust has advantages similar to a lot of the characters we talked about before, where the character's not that common, so a lot of the new tactics people might not be familiar with. Faust is probably out of the bracket runners, maybe the most egregious with the knowledge checks. There's a lot of stuff you have to be ready for, and a lot of stuff comes from RNG. And the thing about Faust is there's a couple type of matchups you can run into. You can have a matchup where Faust just beats you neutral, right? And you're like, oh shit, I gotta beat these buttons. You can have a matchup where you do fine in neutral, but his items are good and you can't fight them. You can't stop them. And of course, Faust players, they have all the EXP of items because they're throwing them all the time. You would have to go out of your way to practice against a Faust player so they have EXP against the items. Even in the case where he has a bad matchup, he does get attempts because anytime he has a chance to roll an RNG, he can get something lucky. And especially if things like meteors, he gets to mix you up from full screen meteors. If you're not ready to deal with 100 ton, he gets to just pull up on you. Mini Faust is GG for a lot of characters, especially if you're not ready. So games can be kind of volatile against him if you're not prepared. His big flaws, of course, item throw is 40 frames, so very vulnerable, especially if you practice against it. His main pokes are they're like minus, all like, I don't want to say double digit minus, I'm definitely saying it off the top of my head, but they're all very negative. So he's weak to dash block and weak to fast characters. I feel really bad for Faust players because they have a bad matchup against Chipp Zanuff, and I don't wish that on my worst enemy. But he could do it to you if you're not prepared and you don't have stuff ready. And in mid-late game, you have to deal with meter stuff, which is usually like teleport RC, tornado RC, him doing something that's really like a poke that's really, really unsafe, like 6p into like tornado, or he'll force drill. Like he has a lot of neutral skips that's pretty annoying to deal with. And despite his volatility, he has a lot of ways he can win the game. So like Kai, I was like, like if I'm playing Kai and I'm down, this is a situation I think when I say like, let me clear this up too. I'll clear it up on Faust. When I say I can or can't see a way to win the game. So what do I mean? So on Kai, I can't think of one. Like, what do I do? Do I throw them and then do CSE and strike throw them? Like, that still requires conditioning and understanding where they are. Like, sure, you're stronger and you do more damage because they're in shock state, so you have a better return for stuff you do. But it's not like haha, you're fucked, right? Where Faust has a bunch of them. Like, if Faust command grabs you, GG. If Faust pulls Meteor, GG. If Faust has 50 meter, you can't whiff shit anymore. Because if you whiff something, he does Scarecrow PRC command grab, GG. Like, there's a bunch of ways he could fucking just beat you. They either like, oh, haha, tra-la-la. Or like Millia. Let's say you're losing to Millia. Use Millia as an example too. Millia, if she catches you slipping and just slips in a 2K2D, you're gonna take like 70%. It could happen to you. you can't YRC the first mix-up on 2K2D, right? So if you're wrong on it, then she's going to just go in her structure and just go for flow, you know what I mean? And that's a really positive aspect for a character, and I think that's Faust's main like X factor. His main thing though, because of the volatility, because of the random factor, and because of like fast characters and stuff, plus like his pokes being negative, and they keep trying to like help him out with this a little bit between like 5H more pushback, 2D more pushback, what is it, drill higher attack level, tornado faster. They try to do like a bunch of stuff to help him, but they don't want to get too out of control. So he's a it can happen to you character. Testament, it might be a hot take that I don't have Testament higher. So Testament, as we know, has an amazing mid and late game because you always have the threat of Stain and you always have the threat of Nostrovia, the super, right? And that's a massive cash out. Testament mix-up is also pretty good too. Now, the Testament is just... it's such a weird thing. In my opinion, if there's a definitive middle of the road character in the game right now, the definitive mid tier of the game is Testament, because like I can point to stuff where I'm like, oh, I could win the game if I get this off of Testament, but then I could also point to stuff where changes where, like for example, like the 2H change, great for pressure, not great for combos, so like the character's damage is lower overall. But they have more opportunities for mix-up. They have more plus frames than they used to. You know, H Fireball +2 now. Like, they have a bunch of stuff that's good for the game. And then they have a bunch of stuff where it's like, oh, if I do this, I could win. So, yeah, it's not like you don't have a clear way of winning. But because the character is also supposed to be like this mid-range zoner, it's not... I feel like it's not when you want to do it. I feel like it's probably like the main way I would point their advantage state is like, you don't get to win when you want to. You get to win when they get to where you want them to be, if that makes sense, right? And on defense, they're not the best. Great backdash, of course. You know, the super, they got super PRC, so that's fine. Best XP in the game. Like, really good neutral. Neutral is really important in this game. But they come across to me like a good mid-late game character. Early game is like, but they're kind of frolicking a little bit to try to get what they want. Matchup-wise, I would really like to sit and talk to Testament about how they feel about their matchup spread. Because when we talk about Testament, I mean, there's some, like, let's say, like Ram or like Chipp, where people or like Geo was probably another one. Or Axl is also another one where people are like, oh, these are probably like pretty hard. A couple of them are from my memory playing Testament. A couple are like theory. But then like, you know, they should have some like pretty good matchups. But then also like the character doesn't really show up to tournaments that much. But then also people don't play them in tournament like that. They're in a really weird spot. I feel like this is a character that could definitely pop off. But at the moment, I can't help but think, like, if someone was like, oh, who should I pick? I'm trying to play a character that will give me a really good shot. I feel like I can't say Testament in earnest. I will say these Testament, Goldlewis, Axl are probably closer to great chance to win than Faust, Kai, and Anji. Where I think, like, Faust, Kai, and Anji have more clear flaws than the people above them. Well, Testament specifically is probably the most well balanced, where if we go to Goldlewis, let's go to Goldlewis. I think Goldlewis has definitive strengths, very, very definitive strengths, but then also very, very definitive weaknesses. So one, praise Daisuke for nerfing that drone. I'm sorry, guys. You guys were not good. Let's keep it a buck. You guys are not good for doing previous patch drone. Can we just agree? You're not good. Doesn't take skill. It's okay. You agree. I agree. If you don't agree, the devs agree with me. So you gotta hold that shit. That shit got nerfed. Praise Daisuke for that one. He knows. Let's talk cons first for Goldlewis before we talk some shit, right? So, number one is I feel like the character is similar to Potemkin in that he kind of makes you have to do stuff. Not that you have to do stuff, but he kind of encourages you to do stuff, right? Which is not necessarily a good thing. not necessarily a good thing. A lot of the characters above him are able to play more reactionary. It's not saying that you can't play reactionary with Goldlewis. He just kind of encourages you to do stuff, right? 2, his defensive position is not that great. Like, he's not good at mashing out. His 6P is not good for mashing. He's really good if like a character pushes himself out and they're slightly minus. He's really good at that, but he's not good at like somebody being slightly minus in front of him. His jump is slow. He doesn't have he's a heavy character, but he doesn't have a heavy grab, so he can't scrub you out in a lot of situations where Nago and Potemkin would. So he's tall, which is not that great for him. But, I mean, his advantage state is amazing. He's really good at building meter. He does a shit ton of damage. He is able to prevent himself from being zoned because he's got the gun and the fair version of the drone. He has a very good mid-range between Farslash, JD, and Behemoth. He has a good situational anti-air in 2Ps. Disjointed is +3. And, of course, once he's in on you, GG. He is the definition, I want to say, of a bracket ruiner. He can fucking end your life if you're not ready to play this character. He does way too much damage. And I'm not saying that like, oh, they need to nerf his damage. I'm saying like in the scope, from the perspective of bracket, he does way too much damage and his advantage state is too good to fuck around. And I think he has a pretty balanced spread of early, mid, and late game. So early game, he combos off basically everything, which is a really, really good thing for him into hard knockdown. And on burst, he gets drone. You can't really zone him, and the longer you try to play defensively, the harder it is to actually keep him out because of security meter. He's good with gold burst and normal burst. Like I feel like he's pretty good at every phase of the game. Matchup wise, I would love to talk to a Goldlewis player about how they feel about matchups. Last match, people were like, dude, this character's like top 5, top 6. I was almost there. I basically was there. Honestly, drone I was like, I was almost there. Let's keep it real. But right now, there's like Chipp he's got to worry about. Baiken, Zato. I heard Jacko's not that great. Nago was like a traditional, pretty hard one. A lot of people say HC, but apparently HC is actually not that bad. And then Mio is kind of tough for him. So there's a lot of characters that he, at least to my knowledge, he struggles with. So I think it's like kind of a good balance right now. I also think he's a pretty hard character to balance because if you go too far, he memes. Depending on the type of fighting game player you are, you either really enjoy that a character like that is super strong or you really despise it. My type is, and honestly, call me jaded or call me a hipster or call me a hater, I don't like it when meme characters are super strong. And what I mean by meme characters is either like they have a win condition that's way too good or way too accessible, something you can't, like, there's always going to be sometimes where the cards are stacked against you. You know what I'm saying? Like, a good example, like, let's take Soul Badguy. Soul Badguy knocked you down. You got, like, 40% life. He has 50 meter. The cards are not in your favor. You need the harder cards. You got to pull Mirror Force or something to get out of that shit. Then you have, like, Arakune cursed you, bro. Like stuff, that's the stuff that I don't like. Where it's just too much. Like, I do think people should be rewarded for playing neutral well and hitting you and putting you in a bad situation. I do think that. I don't like it when a character has like stupid neutral thing that leads into stupid knockdown thing where you can't do it. I don't like that shit that much. So I think the way they make Goldlewis is it's hard to balance him. And you can see how much everyone was hating on him last patch. Where I think like now I think he's in a pretty good spot. Personally, just to me. Axl Low, low-key, as far as a character, is pretty similar to his last version. The only thing is that he does a lot more damage than before. The main things in my head is damage and rainwater. So rainwater change is a huge one because it makes ground versus ground pokes against him risky. Because if he's willing to go for that call and he hits your ground versus ground poke, if you recover, he's plus and you're right in front of him. And if he hits you, he gets a bombo. Right, which forces people to jump. I don't know if people do it preemptively or not, by the way. I personally, he's a character that I'm trying to improve against in the future for my goals, right? So I don't know if people are preempting the jumps against Rainwater or if they're reacting. I will not accept an answer for somebody who plays on a 240 hertz monitor on PC with all delay reduced as much as possible, saying they react to Rainwater. I would like to preferably hear from somebody who is playing on a base PS4 for this answer. But jokes aside, I don't know if people are reacting or if people are doing, I don't really know what the answer is, but the fact that you may have to jump in advance or stay outside of that range means he could do stuff that he's already like 5p. People are already doing that shit, you know? People are already matching on 5p with Axl, so I think that thing is pretty tough. Axl is the classic Guilty Gear bracket ruiner, by the way. He's always been... I remember in Exerd considering picking Axl because he did really well against characters like Jacko, who I really despised in Exerd. He was always a really classic, like, these, like, you know, Chipp always memes him. Traditionally, Millia memes him, but then he memes characters I dislike. So, like he beats Zato usually. He beats Jacko usually, as I mentioned. He's usually pretty good against Mei, if I recall correctly. So he's still kind of in that lane. Even when he was considered one of the weakest characters in the game in previous patches, you would always see him do well because the characters that are really popular in tournament, he does well against not all of them. Like Ram is right there. Ram, his Predator, is right there, for example. But he does well against a lot of them. And some of them are not common in tournaments, like Geo, for example. Or Chipp. Chipp is not super common in tournaments, which also helps him. So overall, I feel like he still has his main strengths, along with more consistent return. And some of these characters in these groups, return was really their problem. Now we get to go the great chance to win, and the character I want to talk about first. There's a certain guy, they used to call him Frederick, and he's from the United States, but now they call him Soul because he's a fucking bad guy, and all you niggas downplayed him. You all told me to my face that nigga was garbage. You called him Mr. Basura, right? You said he was fucking trash, he was washed, that they keep fucking ruining him, he's not fun anymore, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? You got me. You actually got me. From June 2022 to November, let me find the exact date. November 14th, you got me on Soul. I also was not a Soul believer, but one day, I was lucky enough to hop on a plane to Seoul, South Korea. And I went to Fighter Spirit, where I got to play Asian Souls. I played Adoken, I played Mochi Soul, I played Bambamon. While I was playing these guys, while I was not convinced that he was top tier, because they're like, this motherfucker's S tier. They're like, he's god. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, Soul bad guy, he's god. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was not convinced that he was S tier. However, I was like, he's good as fuck. What do you mean? He's good as fuck. Why are people saying he's bottom 5? So when they patched him, and they changed him, you know, you guys got me the first time. But from the beginning, I refused to believe he was not so good. I'm not using Arc Revo, the recent Arc Revo, as a reason why he's good. No. Instead, I'm going to give you character reasons why he's good. If you don't agree with me, fuck you. I don't got shit. That's it. If you don't agree with me, fuck you. Stop downplaying him. Stop fucking downplaying him. Stop doing it. So I'm gonna tell you what's good. I'm gonna tell you what's not good. If you don't like it, hold that. But you do need to like and subscribe. Okay? Because at least, never forget, your boy would never steer you wrong. Even if you don't like this opinion, at least I'm letting you know how I feel. What is good about Soul Bad Guy? So for starters, there was a very fun discussion I had when I made a Baiken matchup chart recently. And I had Soul as either even or slight advantage for Baiken. And a Soul player came up to me, in person, by the way, so shout out to this guy. And he was like, I think your opinion on Baiken versus Soul is very weird. And I was like, why? He was like, so basically you're saying that even though Baiken dominates his words, dominates Soul in the neutral, because she can't combo him when she hits him, and he can combo her when he hits her, it's like evenish. And I'm like, yes. And he's like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, nigga, if I hit you, all Soul is doing is like 6S and far slash. if I hit you, if I don't counter hit you, I don't get a fucking combo. I get to be minus on hit. And if you hit me, you get a combo. And then if I am fucking Primal Brain and mash on parry and you wait for 2 seconds, you do 90% and kill me. Like, what the fuck? Like, what needs to be explained? What needs to be explained? Come on. Okay. So, Soul. Okay, stop memeing. Soul, good things. Consistent conversion ability. He's pretty good at converting hits. Usually when he hits you on normal hits, he gets a combo. It's very, very important in this game. In Guilty Gear, it has never been distributed evenly. Never, ever, ever been distributed evenly. Some characters get the privilege to combo off all their shit. Some characters don't. Usually, characters that can combo off all their shit are good. Usually good. It's definitely a common theme of top tier. Like, if you want to talk about ACR Testament or Exert Alpha and Johnny, I get a lot of heat from Exert players for saying that Exert Millia conversion ability is not good. But that shit is true. You guys are fucking dumb and you just hate Millia. Come on, bro. A crouch confirm. It's the same shit as Baiken, by the way. They do this shit to me in Exert and Strive. She gets a crouch confirm, so they're like, oh, she gets button to Digitalis. Why are you talking about? Because, bro, if they're not crouching, I get far slash into nothing. What the fuck do you mean? What do you mean? Come on. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so that's a very good thing, as we said. Defense, amazing. 3-frame, DP. I mean, honestly, he's got just good buttons. He's got 3-frame 5K, 4-frame 5P, DP. Jump H has the recovery. Jump S pretty big. He's got low profile on Vortex. He's got a guard crush. Pretty good at building meter. I think he's good in basically every phase of the game. We didn't really mention of Axl, but I think there's only one spot where I'm like, oh, Soul can take this game. And what I mean, again, is like a path to victory. Especially the way I always try to look at it, I'm going to repeat this a lot, is when you're down by a lot, what are you going to do to turn this around and try to win on some anime shit? And specifically with Soul, it's when he has meter. For Bandit into 50 meter mix-up. It might sound weird, but it's honestly a pretty strong situation. He does a lot of damage and from it, you know, so he can turn a situation around from that. And when he has 50 meter, he has all his defensive options you have to look out for, so he has the opportunity to at least take back his turn. And he's really, really good at keeping his turn. He's really, really good at eliciting reactions from the defender, because unlike Kai, his main offensive tools are plus. Right? He's a close slash, far slash. So they're both plus, where Kai is only a close slash or shock state stuff. So he's way better at eliciting reactions from the opponent from a safe position. And if the opponent has the cojones to mash, he's got good defense off that anyway. So it's pretty good. So flaws, because I've just been talking about for a while. Flaws. So flaw number 1, stubby buttons. So what do I mean? So he does have 2S. 2S got buffed a while ago, actually. But 6S gets nerfed. You know, like, they keep nerfing 6S. They really want him to pull up on you, which makes some matchups pretty hard for him to actually get in. Especially since, unlike a lot of characters' far slashes, he literally just punches you. He does like a gut punch to you. So he advances. So he's the one doing the far slash, and quite literally. 2, his traditional mix-up is not good. So he is a strike throw character. So, and also personally, I think this is difficult for me. I think for a character like Soul, the way he's set up, I could do it. Soul is actually, and I will definitely relate to a Soul player who tells me they don't like this. 50% by the way, because he's not totally like this. But Soul's major threat is damage. The only thing that he's missing for me to be like, oh, I really dislike this type of thing, is that all his buttons are minus. Because all his buttons are not minus. His main attacking buttons are plus. So at least he has stuff that's safe that he could use to establish his pressure. Where if his stuff was minus, I've said on stream a lot where I'm like, I say this about Shadow Mitsuru. I'm sure, I don't know if Persona players watch like my non-Persona content, but I dropped Shadow Mitsuru, who's generally considered to be either the best or like a top 3 character in Ultimax right now. I despise how all her shit is minus besides a couple things, and her only threat is damage. I don't like that. And when I was playing Yukari, I was like, oh, this is plus, that's plus. I get restand mix up. I get all this shit. So Soul is really close to that. The only thing is that close slash and far slash are plus, which is pretty nice. He's not that fast. He's good at altering his air momentum, not in like it's a pretty direct way. Like Bandit Bringer is probably his main. So on the plus side, it's -2, which is amazing. It's so good. But on the minus side, it's really slow to start up. So some characters have ways of like, maybe they can't 6P you, but they could do like some other button or action and then react to you doing it and then cover the space. A lot of Soul matches, the main reason why he endures is just his advantage state is so solid and his damage is so high. He's a character where his neutral may not be the best in all matchups, but since he's good in every like early, mid, late game, plus he does a lot of damage, plus his beater gain is good, that it can happen to you, and they value that a lot over in Asia, I want to say. Giovanna. So Giovanna, this character, man, this fucking character, bro, this character. Another character, I think actually Giovanna gets downplayed more than Soul somehow. I think this version though, people say she's pretty good. She is really good. Consistent conversion ability, very important. And the new way they do it, I would like to ask a Geo player, is it that it's easier to convert from everywhere? Is it that? Or because like I played her before the season 2 patch, and you could do some bombos from like everywhere, but it wasn't like easy. Where now I want to say that like it's easy. I don't know, you know. I can't say how the new routing affects her, because I've always like she always is able to combo off everything for a good amount of damage. So the only thing I could totally say is that she gets it off like just more stuff, I want to say, because you know she has a close /2H into these routings, right? So it can come up off a lot of stuff. That things matters a lot. Her dash, so her dash is both buffed and nerfed. So there are certain pressure structures in previous patches where her dash would automatically put you outside of throw range out some moves, but then she could throw you. But then they made her throw smaller, and they made her dash manual control. But her dash is just fucking invisible. Like she's with Punish God, like between like how big her kicks are and how fast her dash is. And she has a dash like Leo, right? Like she could attack out of like frame 2. So like she's just able to always threaten you. Her air dash is really hard to see. She has good anti-air. She's also a very complete all phase type character. Like the more meter she has, the higher her defense is. You got to look for dive kick super. She has a bunch of like mix-ups with meter. One of our greatest blessings against this character is that she can't really loop mix-up. So like she can get a knockdown into something, into mix-up, and that mix-up's fucked up, but then she can't like do it again generally. Outside of like, I'm not talking about stuff like, oh, throw, close slash, OTG, 5H whip throw. No, I'm talking about like how on like tall characters she could knock you down. Actually, I think she could loop this on tall characters. She can knock down tall characters and loop fuzzies on them. Or like her old throw used to have like an invisible left right that varied by character. Like she had a bunch of stuff like that. That was really, really good. She does a shit ton of damage as well. Her main thing is that now that we're starting to get to here, we can start talking about fast character flaws. She shares a lot of flaws with Chipp. Not HP, obviously, but she has extended hurt boxes on some stuff. Like far slash is a good button to catch backdashes, but it's really active, so if she fucks up, then she's vulnerable. She's really encouraged to use punches and kicks instead of slashing heavy slashes. This has upsides and downsides. Right? The way that most people rush down with her is pretty committal, but if you're able to set up offense from like 2 character lengths away, her strike throw is actually extremely safe at that range. And she has like your dash throw is it kind of depends, but it would range between like 5 to 10 frames, and at that range it could just be really, really hard to deal with stuff from far, and she gets to stay from a safe range and watch to see if you're trying to escape or whatever. I think she's a pretty hard character to deal with overall, and really the characters that do well against her, or at least what I see her struggle against in tournaments, is characters that don't let her abuse her dash like totally, or characters that for some reason it's hard for her to anti-air. Those seem to be like the kind of the two, especially the former, I think. It comes from like, oh, people saying that she has problems against like Baiken, for example, or like if you see how people play Geo Ram, where they basically just you stand around and wait for far slash and 5H so they can whip punish, because if they go directly at Ram, they're just gonna run into buttons. Overall, really good character. One that's really underrepresented in the West as well. Then you have Jacko. Jacko, I've had the pleasure and displeasure of playing against a lot this patch, thanks to one of my training partners. But the thing about Jacko is that they gave her changes. This I definitely have to talk to a Jacko player with, because I don't really know what her changes have done to her. I could just tell you what it feels like when you're playing. And her main flaw, her number one flaw, honestly, when the game came out, was at round start, she didn't have resource, and now she does. So she's really able to snowball matches. I think she has a lot of flexibility in how she plays in this version. And what I mean is, like, let's say, this is something I used to think about with Millia and Exerd. One question you could have as a Millia player is she has pin, right? And it's a really flexible move. It's a move that lets you attack from a really safe range in the air. And the question ends up being like, when do I actually have to use this move? Because you only get to use it once. You get to use it once and you have to go over and get it, right? You have to go and get that shit. So because of that, what a lot of like, and yes, this is me talking shit, what a lot of like just brain rot longtime GG players is like, oh, it's an approach, yeah, just force, use it as plus, like so hard to play. Yeah, they're gonna tell you that shit. What will end up happening is there's some characters that Millia, you beat all their buttons, you can anti-air all their stuff, and all the buttons you use lead into full combos. Millia versus Mei is a good example of that. So against Mei, there's really only one move you want to use pin against, which is like 2D, right? So you don't have to use pin that much. Or Soul is another one where, like, Soul, you know, he's got Gunflame, I guess. But besides that, like, the neutral exchanges are pretty even besides damage. And, like, your buttons beat his, especially if your eyes are wide open. So it's like, you don't have to use that shit. You can just hold on to it. And then everyone's scared of you that shit all the time. Maybe if you're in the air and they're mashing on 6P, then you can throw it. But besides that, you don't have to do it. But then there's some characters where all their buttons beat yours. Everything leads into combos. And they're also, if you don't fight them in neutral, then they're going to set up some bullshit from far away. And then you might have to use that shit. So Jacko kind of gives me that feel where, like, there's some characters where I feel like Jacko can just run around and crouch and just mash on 2K and she's chilling. There's other characters where, oh, well, if I whiff on a 2K and they swing some shit, then you take this fat combo, you get in the corner, so you have to run away and summon minions instead, and you play the minion WarioWare game where you're kicking the minions and them shit. And there's some characters that don't let you summon minions, so you have to like dash block and dash jump. Like, I feel like there's like a lot of ways you have to play her to be successful. Her advantage state out of control. I mean, we all agree, out of control. So the main thing I feel like ends up being is that a lot of Jacko players pick her because they like the minion stuff, and then they try to force the minion stuff on people in matchups that they may not necessarily be able to do it against. Some of them, it might actually be okay, and it could be like a dash block 2K angle, but then there's some, like the traditional one would be like Ram, for example, I know that they don't like, and Chipp they don't like, where like the character is too fast, or the buttons are too big, and like the situation is too good for them if they get this XYZ, right? That being said, though, the way that she's set up right now, I feel like her advantage state is really stable. She's good in early, mid, and late game, you know, because if she bursts off you, guaranteed minion. Gold burst means she gets guaranteed minion, and she's going to pull up on you. And in super, early game, she hits you randomly, then she's going to meme you. So I think she always has a chance to do it in every phase. Like, you can look and be like, oh, I have a way to win. If she throws you, she can mix you. Like, she got stuff like that. It's pretty good. So her thing is where she's kind of in the mode of where I think like Soul and Geo have actually a pretty balanced matchup spread. Jacko probably has a slightly less balanced matchup spread, but really good advantage state and very balanced for each phase of the game. And you have Zato. So Zato is kind of another one of that lane of many playstyles, lots of I forgot to mention before, lots of notch checks, many playstyle, really strong advantage state, really good in every phase of the game. So like early game, 2K2D, GG, buttons at a 5H, pierce RPS, if you're raw on RPS, GG, break the wall with sword, GG. Right, but then on the other hand, there's a bunch of stuff where he doesn't really get anything off it, like 5 PPP into nothing. He has that problem. Low guts, low life. Jacko has this issue too. Low guts, low life. There's matchup stuff like HC, Mei, Ram, Chipp that are all like really difficult for him. But I mean, on Gold Burst, he's good. On Blue Burst, he's good. Both meaningful situations for him. So it just comes from like his goal is really to do his best to get his advantage state, because if he gets his advantage state, he can push through his problems. Because his defense is not that great. Like, it's not like a Zato. The Zato player is not mashing 2K on defense so that he can get 2K 2D. They're usually mashing on P or 6P or something like that. He's not that great at getting out of the corner compared to other characters. He's great at stalling the air because of Flight. The Flight has startup. But his main thing is just, again, advantage state. He's really good at building meter. I should have mentioned that for Jacko too. He's really, really, really good at building meter because of how much stuff he's doing. He's building a ton of meter from doing all this stuff. So it puts him in a good position to take advantage of his strengths. Then we have my mama. I have heard people say all especially I talk about her a lot on like Twitter and stuff. I'm gonna give you my real thoughts. I've been playing her since Evo now, so right now it's March. So good things, amazing buttons, great mix, good at building meter, good baseline game plan, path to victory is there, good at all. I'll say good at all phases of the game. I don't necessarily think she's super great early phase because you don't necessarily get combos of all your stuff. But like mid late game for sure, she's really good. She's able to alter her air momentum a bunch of ways. She's really good with meter. There's like so many uses for meter. Good in neutral, block string offense, block string defense, knockdown, opponent's knockdown. Like she's just good at everything. The main downsides, I would say, I mean, one, again, I kind of lean towards early game because she's not good at converting random ground versus ground hits unless they're crouching or counter hit. I know someone's gonna roll their eyes and be like, yeah, if you counter hit, you get a combo. You don't always get a fucking counter hit, bro. Come on, man. Like, come on, bro. You just don't. Like, if I'm HC and I hit that 2S, I get a full combo. If I hit 2S on somebody who's running at me, and like, I see it in my games. I really used to be like, why do people just run into Tatami and run into Faust? Like, sometimes people just run into my shit. And then I was like, I guess I'm not comboing them. That's the only reason. Like, they just don't give a fuck. Like, they just don't give a fuck. That's it. Because I'm not getting combo unless I press certain buttons. And it really is like that. Because of her, she has parry. So she has a extremely unique meterless reversal compared to everyone else. Like, everyone else has, like, DP basically as a meterless option. She has this parry. So, I know this is a hot take. Defensively, and it is going to sound weird. Because, okay, I'm just going to say it first. I'm going to say why it sounds weird and then why I feel the way that I do. You need to know a ridiculous amount of shit about this game to play Baiken successfully. I know, especially on defense, because the main thing that people complain about is her defense and how her defense doesn't let people do what they want to do. You might be like, oh, you need to know a lot about defense in general. That's true. You are correct for saying that. You need to know a lot about defense in this game in general to have successful defense. However, what happens with Baiken is that because you have a threat that cannot be... Basically, you can't option select this thing, right? If the opponent doesn't have some type of projectile they could put on you, the opponent can't... Like, you can't safe jump parry... You can outspace parry, but then you get guard crush parried, which she's plus on, right? So, which means the opponent has to build structures built around that option, and then Baiken's options built around those options, and you can go down this very unique rabbit hole to just her. So, for example, let's start with parry. So parry is apparently 1-7 catch, recently found for this patch. So 1-7 patch and not catch and not 1-6. So that means you can't safe jump, and then for 7 frames, any attack that comes, you get caught. Right? You get caught. Okay. So the popular one, and this is an example of someone who doesn't actually understand the character that much, is that, oh, parry's broken because she has parry PRC, and if she wishes to parry, she can PRC it. But on defense, the thing that beats parry also beats parry PRC, because parry PRC, the PRC has 6 from startup. So whatever you did to beat parry will also beat parry PRC. Okay, so that's good for the person attacking her then, right? So what does the Baiken player do to compensate? So for example, delayed 5p, a 5p that you try to aim for like the last 3 or 4 frames. The parry would beat what people would use to beat parry and parry PRC. Or if someone does like, oh, let me run extra and then delay attack, then you have to worry about throw or a delayed throw, right? Or if it meters in play, then backdash PRC. If someone's trying to stack throw plus throw PRC on Baiken, you have to worry about delay Yozansen. Like okay, I block your meaty, but if you try to throw me, then I do Yozansen. So a lot of these situations are all built around this magic number of, it used to be 6, now it's 7, plus what the opponent can do to you, plus the person you're playing against. And unlike a DP, the main thing about DP is that you can pretty reliably stack offense against DP in a straightforward way. So the easy example is just knockdown, right? Like you knock someone down. I'm sorry to the person who always comments this. You knock someone down with a DP and you safe jump them, and then a DP whiffs because you safe jump them and you punch a DP. You can't do that to parry, so that means you have this whole extra thing that can come up. So these things have to be built out a lot. So Baiken, typically people say that the reason why she doesn't really win is because she's not like a stable character, but I just think it's just because the type of player that plays her, the tactics that they use is not stable, and that people haven't taken the time to really totally break these things down. And I'm not saying that there aren't players who have been trying, but it's not like, let's say for like HC, like the type of player that plays HC is either like the scummy guy who always picks the scummy top tier, or like a research type. So because all the research type pick HC, then they're all researching HC at the same time and trying to push like his stuff. But that type of person doesn't usually pick Baiken. So in the end, like her main flaws end up being the amount of time it takes to develop defense to make things truly obnoxious for opponents, and then also because of how parry works, you can't do it to all characters. So you can't do it to like Zato, you can't do it to like Millia in all cases, you can't do it to HC sometimes, you can't do it to Ram very often because they all have like meaty projectile stuff that's plus. Her conversion ability is not that great. Ground versus ground, which is really important in this game, especially because of how the movement is, which makes her early game not the best. So there are matches where it technically should be fine, but if you try to play it like a traditional match, you'll get reward diffed. So like Ram is a really big example of that. Let's talk about Bridget. So Bridget, I'll let you in on a little secret. A lot of top North American players think Bridget is top 5. They think she's ridiculous. I probably underrate her compared to many tournament NA Strive players. They really think Bridget is ridiculous. Main things being that Bridget is pretty good in every phase of the game. Bridget's able to do pretty safe mix-up, good offense, fast knowledge checks. This is a slight derogatory check at what people value, but I actually think Bridget and Zato are relatively similar in this, like, oh, there's fast knowledge checks that you need to know stuff about to do. And it's not for Bridget players, by the way. This is for people who are like, oh, Bridget is God. Like, Bridget is the new hotness, right? Because you need to know these knowledge checks and be able to act on them quickly, and Bridget is new, and like these buffs just came in December. I think a lot of people just don't know what to do, personally. I'm trying to flesh this out on my own to see, is it a case of, oh, it's actually just super fucking ridiculous, or we don't know what to do by learning the matchup in detail, because I have been putting that off. But I don't think that takes away her flexibility in neutral, her overall, like, you know, any phase of the game you get hit by 2k 2d, any phase of the game you get thrown. She has good quarter push, lots of variable pressure and stuff, all stuff that's pretty important in the game. Main flaw is just like she dies and she doesn't do a lot of damage, and she gives the opponent a lot of meter. I think are probably like the main big ones. They have Ram. I don't think she's totally fallen from grace. I think from where we are now, I mean, outside Zato, I actually think you can put Zato in this group. We're in like tourney established characters. So Ram's like all the same strengths, just like damage lower, Rekka 3, no knockdown, are like the main big ones. Like she still does a good amount of damage despite that. She's pretty good at she's pretty good. Okay, she's good. She does a ton of damage, but she has, depending on what's going on, like she might build a bunch of bursts for the opponent depending on what she does. Her footsie is still the god. Ram, it really depends on what's going on in the region, because like she's very fast, she has good kicks, and she has like far slash and 5H. But there are characters like Geo and Chipp who like hunt her down with like their mega fast attack, like easy to whip punish her and stuff. Millia is actually pretty decent with punishing Ram as well, especially with S-Disc buff. But these characters, these three especially, are not that common in NA. So Ram is able to do a better job of like doing the things she does with far slash and 5H and playing that neutral game and getting you in the corner and stuff. We already know she has a really good positive situation. Out of the old top tiers, because I thought she was just a straight up top tier last patch, she had the worst conversion ability already, and then they nerfed Rekka 3, so that was like a pretty big issue. She should still do well, and she was always a character where we were like, why does she not perform well even though everyone thinks she's really strong? And it really just came from like the volatility that came from like a lot of the top tier characters do a lot of damage and they convert better than her, and she doesn't have a lot of life, and some of them do, like, you know, like Nago doesn't die, Leo doesn't die. So she had like that problem, and I think it's just accentuated this time, but she's still really good at what she does, and she still is overall a really, really good character for the game, and a hard character to deal with, and a character, I mean, probably starting around Geo, I want to say, the characters start to really demand a lot from the opponent that's playing against them, I want to say. That's probably something about Chipp as well. So the only thing I'll say about Chipp is like a lot, again, he's a character that people heavily downplay, I think. Let's talk about Chipp's flaws. Chipp, extended hurt boxes are a big problem for Chipp. Far slash is like one of his main like go-to buttons, extended hurt box. Chipp is really fast, but he's sending himself at you a lot. So even though his air dash is better than better as in faster than other characters, like he's sending himself at you. A lot of his stuff is minus. Basically, all his pressure is interactable. You could mash Gamma Blade. You could do stuff about his Rekkas, right? But he's really good at building meter. So if you're not prepared, he can maul you. He's gonna build the meter, and after positive, it's GG, and he's able to break the wall from really, really, really far, like really far. So you really can't fuck around. The main thing about him in tournament too is he, out of all the characters we've talked about, one easily amongst the high performing characters. But also, out of almost all characters in the game, he has some of the least room for error because he builds risk as fast as Millia, which is the worst in the game. At 1.25 modifier, worst in the game. He takes a shit ton of damage. He has good guts, but he takes the most damage. So the main thing, and like this is why I kind of give it to them, but it's like when you tell them about all the good things about him, some people are just not trying to hear it. Just like, oh, I die if I fuck up. He really does actually die if he fucks up, but he is that really detestable style of he's God, but he dies if he fucks up, which is really annoying, but it is a true flaw of his. It really is a true flaw of his. And they helped him out with stuff by giving like Senshu, so like the last hit of Rekka, he gets a soft knockdown of that, you know, so he has a little bit more counterplay against lows, and he has more ways of converting into an advantageous situation, and he was already good in advantage. And his defense is good. So, and his defense not HP, but like, you know, he's got 3 frame, he's got a DP, his backdash travels far. He's a very hard character to play against. He demands a lot from you, and he smothers you. It's so hard to get him off you. It's so hard to fight him in neutral, and when he gets in, and like Geo, he's gonna get in. It's so hard to keep him off you, and even like a standard rando Chipp will like smother you, and you have to just like, if you don't know how to defend against it, it's GG. Then we have the goats. So these are the guys. Those are the people. Those are the fellas. These are the ones. These are the ones when someone is like, I don't like any character in this game, and I'm trying to show somebody something. Who the fuck do I play? You play one of these 4 characters. So let's talk about Happy Chaos first. So, might be a slightly hot take. I don't think Happy Chaos is the best character in the game. Happy Chaos is extremely demanding to the opponent. And what I mean, because I've said this a couple times, what I mean is the assumption is if you play a hard character, I don't know if the stream chat, I've been peeking at the stream chat while I've been, giving you my mixtape, but I don't know how hard or how easy you think certain characters are, right? So let's say, I don't know if you guys agree, let's say that Happy Chaos is a hard character to learn. He takes a couple of, like 3-4 weeks of losing nonstop before you have a good idea of his match flow and how to set everything up. Even with all the footage you have of him doing well in tournaments, you still need help building the game plan, learning how to fight characters, learning when you should do what based off resource, blah, 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 right? So I don't know if you guys think if he's easy or hard. Okay, that's not the point. The point is that once you get to the point where you are a competent Happy Chaos, not even tournament winning, not a top 8, not a top 32, not like Hook's dog, like top 32, just like a, you could play Celestial, you're like level 1500 Celestial HC. Just by playing him, you demand so much from your opponent, because if your opponent is missing something from their game plan against HC, they are not allowed to play the game. They just cannot play the game. They need to know how to play around the resource. They need to know how much resource he used. Like, when you're further, he uses more focus meters, so he has to focus faster, or you could pull up here. They need to know that this thing is -3, this guard crush thing is -3 from this range. They need to know how to deal with all this stuff, how to elicit. Basically, the goal against HC is to convince the person playing him, them to use as much meter as possible for when they feel like approaching you, so that they can't do anything, so that they have to take risks that you can kill. Doesn't sound very fun. I agree. Doesn't sound very fun, but that's basically what it is, and it actually does really matter, and that's where the skill of the character comes from, is playing this type of game. And if the opponent is not ready for it, they just can't play. So, like, if you're talking about weaknesses, it's basically that his defense is garbage, and his main threat on defense is that he gets a full combo if he hits you. But besides that, he has no reversal super, he builds a lot of burst, he's hard to manage his resource, personally, especially when you're learning. And if a character is good at fighting the resource, he's going to have a hard time, but his conversion ability is really high, his mix-up is god, his offense is pretty good. He's not... I feel like a lot of people are still feeling like it's 2022, where he had way more of just like a non-interactive game, where now there's a lot of points and angles you can choose to, like, oh, I'll do this to fight him, or I'll do this to make them do this so I could do this type thing. It takes a lot of preparation, but it can be done. And especially, like, despite all these things, I mean, he's still mad good. I mean, he still doesn't have to aim that shit. He still has RNG shot. He still combos off all his stuff. He still has God Wall Slump. He still has all those really good offensive things. And we see him perform consistently all the time. Then there's Nago. So, Nago, he got two key nerfs. One is the 2S nerf. Thank fucking God they nerfed that shit. And 2 is the more blood he has, the more damage he takes. So it kind of tells me they're cool with him being really strong. They're cool with it. But there's more risk involved, especially because people were just wilding with this character last patch. Just wilding with this character. So what it turns into is you can still maul with Nago. You can still have the time of your life. And honestly, if you're a typical Nago player, you probably don't feel that different. Like, again, I referenced the level 1500 8 scene tower. So if you're like a level 1500 Nago in tower, you're probably chilling. Honestly, you might not even realize he's nerfed. But in tournament, you feel it. In tournament, for sure, you feel it. Because Nago, just like HC, just like Chipp, just like Ram, just like Bridget, just like Baiken, just like Zato, just like Jacko, Nago demands so much from the opponent. So we're getting to the point where many people have very detailed anti-Nagoriyuki strategies. And if you happen to be like a lazy type of RPS heavy, I'm going to get in and do my thing, and you're not good at that, then now you have 2 blood and you can't teleport at me, and when I hit you with Millia 2K2D, I kill you in 2 mix-ups, and that's Millia. In Baiken, it's even worse. You're gonna die even faster, right? So that thing really does matter, and I think you see it reflected in people's play. So he has all the same strengths, but he's missing one major strength from last patch, and where I said I thought he was the best character, in that when you hit him, he dies. And before, when you hit him, he did not die. And not only did he not die, but he would build meter and get a guaranteed 50 meter to try to meme you. Where now it's not guaranteed, because now he will take a lot of damage from many characters if he plays that type of game. And then there's Mei. So I've had some people tell me that they think Mei is the best character in the game. Mei's in the thumbnail of the YouTube video that's not out yet stream. I can't tell you if I think she's the best. I do think she's extremely good. One of the amazing things about Baiken is the -3 situation. She's really good at -3 situation, but she has multiple. She has Tatami that pushes you out, and she has Kabaddi that pulls you in. Now, Mei has a consistent one. S-Dolphin's consistent. It's -3, goes to the same spot, and because it's -3 instead of -5, she's able to engage way more on it against way more characters. A lot of old counterplay against Totsugeki, the S-Dolphin, doesn't work anymore. And on top of that, the H-Dolphin is +7. So in the case that you do take an H-Dolphin, she's like heavy advantage. She's really good at building meter. She's really hard to anti-air. Her single jump is amazing now. She's always done a ton of damage, so she's really able to end it really fast, and she's able to do pressure like the other, like Nago, Soul, Geo. They all have +3 close slashes, so she's able to do that style of pressure. But she's doing it with command grab, and her command grab has more threat than the only equivalent threat I would say is Nago. So Geo has throw, and is Geo throw scary? Yes, but it is a throw, so you can tech it. Is one. And the situation varies depending on how much meter she has. If it's Soul, is his throw good? Yeah. Wild throw throws you out the corner. Now, the thing about Nago, of course, he has bite. Bite is GG. But Mei, you get a command grab into a kind of burst safe. Mei player, correct me. Is it fully burst safe? I'm not sure. But I know the beginning is definitely burst safe. First couple hits is burst safe, right? Which is really strong, and she's able to set it up in situations where she's either heavily advantageous or very like -1, off her jab, where it's really strong. Her neutral baseline is really obnoxious because she's got like 5k that beats lows, and then she's got like 5H. She's an amazing counter poker. You got 5H, 2S, far slash to hit like jump angle. So she's just really good at navigating mid-range, counter poking, building meter really quickly, good reward, good fast RPS, and she has a bunch of ways to win. Like throw it goes into 50-50, gives her meter. Making you block close slash honestly is nightmare. If she makes you block a 50-50, good fucking luck. She's got a lot going for her right now, and probably one of the main blessings of North America scene is as far as consistent tournament performers, there's, to my knowledge, get mad at me if you want, but to my knowledge, it's just one, and it's Corey. Just one. And that is our blessing, that there's not more than one. Okay? Last one is Leo. Leo is the only character I put there for a reason, because fuck Leo. Leo is definitely, I think Leo is the GOAT of the entire game. Honestly, even more than Nago. I would definitely hear arguments for GOAT of the game being Nago or Leo. Leo just good in every phase of the game, clear paths to victory, does a lot of damage. So when I say every phase of the game, I mean not just so both offense, defense, knockdown, and block string offense. Wait, offense, defense, block string offense, block string defense, knockdown, and neutral. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. But also early game, mid game, late game. So he's good at both. Good meter gain, good positive, god of meter, great mix-ups all the time. He just has everything. He really has everything. His main weaknesses is that there's some characters he has problems getting in on, but even on them, he builds meter, and it's hard to rush him down. And he's constantly a threat on defense, and he can win from defense. He's one of the few characters that literally beat you from defense. You can say, for example, HC beats you from defense, but HC has to mash. While you're correct that is game win, like a 2K from HC is game winning, he has to hit you, right? Or the same about Nago. Like, oh, Nago wins from defense. He's at backdash. He's got the big ass strokes. He's heavy. He's got like the joke to 5K, right? But and I'll be like, yeah, but it's not like getting DP'd into losing, bro. Like, if he has 50 meter, he 50-50s you. And then if not, he does HTP, counter hit. He gets to do White and mix you up. I mean, even if that mix-up is not as good as his throw mix-up, for example, or Turbulence knockdown or something, like, it's still, he gets to go in the back turn. That's mad threatening. You got to do something because you can't do nothing. If you do nothing, you die. So that's my mixtape.